Diane makes an eyebrow-raising proposal, and Nate ambushes Holden. Today on The Young and the Restless, Holden visits Nate's apartment, Diane wants to make changes, and Nikki gives Claire advice. At the Abbott mansion, Diane tells Jack it was nice to see him and Billy getting along so well. Jack teases, "Watch out. The Abbott boys are back." Diane thinks the whole family is back and that Kyle is falling in love. Jack thinks it's good for their son and for Claire, who gets to be with a family who doesn't make impossible demands. He warns about Victor trying to ruin their relationship. Diane shares his concerns about Victor, but fears her husband is overreacting a little bit. He wouldn't do anything to hurt Claire. Jack reminds her how he's interfered with Victoria's relationships for her own good. They debate whether to find a way to stop him. Diane thinks they need to let Kyle and Claire handle it. She doesn't want Jack in another war with Victor. Jack gets her point. Diane says they thwarted his last attack, but it almost destroyed their family. She points out he's blatantly disregarded Victor's warning about staying away from Nikki and in the park. Kyle tells Claire she looks happy. She is for many reasons, and he is right at the top. She loved hearing his dad tell stories about the family. Kyle agrees that it's great. He wonders if he'll be telling stories about the great Jack Abbott one day. He probably will be. Kyle tells Claire she's remarkable and they kiss. Holden and Nate sit on the patio at Crimson Lights. Nate apologizes for springing it on him that he's connected to his mother. Holden asks how he and Amy even know each other. Nikki walks in and Nate introduces her. She is polite, but walks off. Nate tells Holden that was Nikki Newman. Going back to how he knows Amy, Nate tells him she worked for his father. Holden says he didn't know about any of this. They talk about Nathan being a PI. Nate says the work appealed to him. He liked solving a puzzle. Holden is told he passed away when Nate was young and says he's sorry. Nate says, "You lost your dad when you were young too, right?" Holden says, "Yeah," and then asks why Amy would have him try to contact him. There has to be more to it than just knowing his dad. Nate thinks he should meet with Amy so she can explain, but Holden says, "Absolutely not." Inside, Claire and Kyle tell Nikki what a nice lunch they had at the Abbott house hearing about John. Nikki still misses him. Kyle jokes that Claire is practically an honorary member of the family already. Nikki looks wary. At Society, Audra tells Amy about her latest job interview woes. Amy acts off and Audra jumps up and asks if she's okay. She's just a little bit dizzy. Audra wants to get her out of there. Amy swears she'll be fine, but she doesn't look it. On Crimson Light's patio, Holden won't explain to Nate why he refuses to meet with Amy. He wants to hear whatever it is to tell, but only from him. Just then, Nate gets an urgent message from Audra saying something is wrong with Amy. At Nate's place, Audra tries to talk Amy into going to the hospital, but she insists she just needed to rest. She's had these episodes before. Audra worries she's having them more frequently. Amy's dismayed to hear she texted Nate. Audra assures her they're happy to help her. Amy tells her how sweet she is and she laughs. That's not how people in Genoa City would describe her. Amy thinks she doesn't allow them to know her. Audra gets her water and talks about going on another shopping spree. Amy reminds her she won't be around much longer. Audra is sure she still has a lot of life to live. Amy says it's not as much time as she thinks. She's a realist and knows her time is short. Audra hates hearing this and tells her she can't give up now. She's on the verge of reuniting with her son. Amy's not sure she can believe that. If Damien wanted to see her, it would have happened by now. At Crimson Lights, Nate takes off after telling Holden he got an urgent text. Damien walks in and Holden tells him he has no clue what that was about. Nate gets more mysterious every time he talks to him. At the Abbott Ranch, Diane and Jack bicker about him going over to check on his friend Nikki. She respects his friendship, but Victor doesn't. Jack asks if she's mad. She denies it. Diane then says she has something to run by him. She loves this house, which is practically a living, breathing part of the family, but it's tired and run down. She wants to make a few tweaks. Jack cops, "You want to redecorate?" Diane claims she just wants to refresh it. Jack recalls when Gloria made it look like a Las Vegas hotel lobby. Diane's just talking about some new paint colors and furniture. Jack senses she wants more than that. Diane complains about Harrison growing up around antiques. Jack's not concerned. Everything in the place tells a story. Just wants a little piece of her in there too. Inside Crimson Lights, Kyle and Claire share one of Jack's stories about John with Nikki. Kyle gets a call and steps outside. Nikki and Claire discuss the two of them getting closer. Claire knows her grandfather has a problem with it. She can't understand this and thought he'd come to accept her and Kyle being together. Nikki says the ordeal with Ian and Jordan made him more protective and he doesn't trust Jack. Claire's sorry, but she won't let him interfere in her life. Nikki warns Victor can be persistent. Claire thinks maybe Nikki could convince him they're good for each other. Would you do that? Please. Nikki thinks that would be a hard sell. She's already tried, and he's adamant that Kyle's a poor choice for her. Claire complains this is about his stupid war with Jack. Nikki says it doesn't matter when he digs his heels in. She tells Claire they want her to be happy, but she worries she'll miss out with Kyle as long as Victor's determined Tonette arrives at home and learns Emmy nearly passed out at society. They bicker over her refusal to go to the hospital. Nate declares that she needs someone around to look after her. He wants her to stay with him. Andy worries she's imposing, but he won't take no for an answer. He also wants her to see the top oncologist in the country. Audra tells her they want to do this for her. Emmy tears up and thanks them. She asks Nate how it went with Damien. Does he want to see me at all? On Crimson Light's patio, Holden tells Damien that Nate kept trying to convince him to see his mom. He told him it wasn't going to happen, but he still wants to talk. Damien can't understand what his mother has to do with any of this. At Nate's place, he tells Emmy that Damien still has a lot of questions. He had to tell him she worked for his father. Emmy says she never told him as she didn't want him to be curious about Genoa City at all. Audra recaps that she was trying to protect him. Emmy says, I did it for me, to be honest, to protect myself. Nate says her son isn't ready to deal with her. Audra says it's something at least that he still wants to know more. Emmy worries about how deep his anger runs. Nate can't blame the guy for being cautious. He thinks the only way Damien will consider meeting her is if he knows the truth. He should tell him. Emmy says no. It has to be her way. Nate says they can tell him together. He'll have to get him to agree to meet, but there's no telling how he'll react. Emmy agrees. It's time Damien knows everything. She'll have to prepare herself for his reaction. At the Abbott mansion, Diane assures Jack she feels comfortable there, but she'd like to make a contribution. Jack's afraid to sign off on this, but Diane reminds him she was an architect. She won't damage the integrity of the house. Jack asks if this sudden desire to refresh has anything to do with Victor rebuilding the ranch house. Diane denies it. Jack wants the house to be just as he's always remembered it. He needs time to think about it and run it by Ashley and Tracy. Diane agrees to leave it at that. Jack announces he's headed back to the office. His wife thanks him for considering her request. Once alone, Diane is joined by Tracy, who is back from Chicago. Diane tells her she needs her help convincing Jack to go along with a little project. Tracy looks wary. Diane tells her sister-in-law she suggested to Jack that now might be a good time to redecorate this place. Tracy is taken aback and surprised to hear that Jack agreed to think about it. He's the most sentimental one of all of them, and there are so many memories there. Diane loves that, but she's looking for a little refresh. Tracy says Jack doesn't deal with change easily. Diane wants her to help convince him. Tracy admits she thinks the house could use an update. "Ok, I guess I'm in." In Crimson Lights, Nikki tells Claire she's tried for years to negotiate peace between Victor and Jack. The calm periods never last, and it really kicked into high gear after that night in the hotel. She's sure he'll never forgive Jack. Claire says it's Kyle he's punishing, and her. She won't accept that. There has to be a way to change his mind. Nikki says, that depends on you. She suggests she convince Victor that Kyle is caring and protective and remind him how similar they are. Claire is keen on this idea. Nikki thinks it may be the key to her getting what she wants. Kyle rejoins them and Nikki takes off. He asks Claire if everything is all right. She wonders what he'd think of having dinner with her grandfather on the patio. Holden gets a call from Nate, who apologizes for leaving abruptly and asks him to come over and continue their conversation. There, he'll tell him the whole truth about his mother. Nate welcomes Holden into his home and he greets Audra, who leaves them.